Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Dome at Home, the Manitoba Museum's weekly astronomy show. My name is Scott Young, and I am the planetarium astronomer at the Manitoba Museum and your host. And it has been quite the week. We had, of course, the wonderful lunar eclipse on Sunday. We did a live broadcast from that. We had so many people I ran into out at the park, some of the Dome at Home regulars and some other people as well. And I've just been getting piles and piles of your pictures and drawings and stories about the eclipse. I'm really glad that we had such relatively good weather. There were some clouds we were fighting at the beginning, at least here in Winnipeg, but it turned out not too bad. We had some really, really nice clear skies for most of the event with only a few little gaps. I hope you had a good chance to see it. If you didn't, you can always visit our YouTube channel, and there you will be able to see the entire archived event. So I highly recommend checking that out. It was awesome. Let's see, we got a bunch of the regulars checking in. Nice to see you all. Some of you I now can put a face to the name, either because you were in one of our Dome at Home astronomy courses where you get to have your cameras on and I can actually see who I'm talking to, or because we got to meet under the stars on Sunday night at the eclipse. We will be doing more in-person live events as things become a little more stable and so on. We will be getting out there and doing more events where people can come out and gather under the stars, look through telescopes and that kind of stuff. All right, so we have a full show today with about 10 bazillion things that we have to cover. So we're going to get sort of right into it. At least I think we are. I've got a number of different things that are all happening today. The wonderful chat software that I use that lets me talk to everybody is functioning, but for some reason they've upgraded it. And so now there's a picture, there's the video beside me. But the thing is, it's about 4 seconds behind actual live. So I'm basically, to use the chat, I have to look at myself 4 seconds in the past. And it's really disturbing in terms of, the voice and stuff. So anyway, if I'm a little more discombobulated than normal, that's probably why. All right, let us get into some of the big things that are happening this week. And one of them, shameless plug, the Manitoba Museum is doing some really cool stuff. There we go. We are opening a brand new exhibit in Alloway Hall. That's our temporary hall. It's called Ultimate Dinosaurs. And yeah, it's about dinosaurs. I've been watching them assemble these things for the last couple of weeks. It opens on Saturday, and it's running all summer. So that'll be something to check out. There's actually a members preview this evening. For those of you that were museum members, you would have got the email inviting you down. In which case you're probably not watching the show. But it includes a whole bunch of real-sized, full-size skeletons and also some neat augmented reality things. And it's not just, dinosaurs on display. There's science behind it. There's the paleontology. There's the story of these creatures. And they're not the ones that we would have here in North America. They're from other parts of the world. So that's kind of cool, too. It kind of blew my mind when I was reading the exhibit copy how much variation was caused by the changes of the Earth. You may know, the Earth had the one supercontinent, Pangaea, and then that split up. And so the dinosaurs on those continents that were suddenly isolated from each other actually did, adapted to the different climates, the different locations, and the different habitats, and turned out a little bit differently. So it's not just a T-Rex with a different name because it was found on the other side of the world. It's a separate, related species. So very cool exhibit. Highly recommend you check that out. That's on Saturday. I got a couple of sneak peek pictures of the exhibit. There's a really big Gigantosaurus, hence the name. I still can't believe that this thing was running around eating things. That's terrifying. There's the Malawosaurus, which looks kind of like one of the, like a Brontosaurus or a Diplodocus or any of those kinds of creatures, right? And just the sheer scale is really fun. Now, going along with that show, the planetarium is opening a brand new planetarium show, which is called Dinosaurs, A Story of Survival. You probably know that the dinosaurs largely went extinct 65.5 million years ago or so. And the culprit, as far as we can tell, the final nail in the coffin for the dinosaurs was the impact of an asteroid into the Earth. There may have been some other things going on. We'll talk about that in a minute. But so there's an astronomy connection here. And so the planetarium show will go into that astronomy connection and also talk about dinosaurs and so on in kind of a fun way, a little bit different than just looking at the static skeletons upstairs, but seeing it in a different way. So I'm going to run the trailer for that show right now, and then I'm going to see if I can fix the chat so it doesn't drive me crazy. And I'll be back with you in just a minute. So let's see.
We fold it here. We rotate it. Wait, no. We fold it. We stick this in the middle. We open it again? It's impossible. I give up.
Hello, Celeste.
Hi, Moon.
Is everything okay?
No, nothing's going right. Tomorrow I have to make a presentation at school, and I wanted to take an origami dinosaur with me.
But not all the dinosaurs went extinct.
What do you mean they didn't? Everybody knows that the impact of a meteorite finished them off.
And what if I told you that there are still dinosaurs among us?
That would be amazing, but...
Well, they're much closer than you think.
What about a Dilophosaurus? And the Stegosaurus? No, wait. I'm dying to see an Allosaurus. What are they doing, Moon? Are they going to fight? They are so super humongous. A chicken? What does a chicken have to do with a dinosaur?
So there you have it, a fun show on dinosaurs. That'll be opening up on Saturday as well. And that will run through the summer along with our current feature, Legends of the Northern Sky, which talks about Anishinabeg and Inninawak and other indigenous sky tellings, constellation stories, and so on. And of course, the sky show, Manitoba Skies, which is the guided tour of the night sky. So we've got a full lineup for the summer for the planetarium, as well as the new exhibit up in the museum. And yeah, that'll be a busy summer for us. And there's still a couple of other things I can't quite announce yet that'll be happening this summer. All right. I wanted to share some mail we got last time. First of all, this last week is kind of a wonderful week because I got to talk to so many of you either in person or you sent me emails or letters or things like that. It was just really nice. Last week, oops, I pulled my earphone out. Last week, we were featuring the Churchill Rocket Range, if you remember. And after that show aired, we got this letter. Hi there, I saw your interview on YouTube during the Dome at Home broadcast last night. The rocket range at Churchill is very special to me. I was part of an Aerobee 150 sounding rocket launch founded by NASA on March 10th, 1975. I was a third-year graduate student in chemical physics at Johns Hopkins University, and although my PhD thesis was lab-based, my principal investigator asked me to oversee the launch of 2 electron spectrometers that had been developed for the Aerobee. It was a great trip, and I always promised myself that I would go back. This February, my wife and I fulfilled the promise. I've attached a few photos. And so that opened up a dialogue where we suddenly have this treasure trove of material from the 1975 launch of a rocket up there, and a connection with someone who worked up there, and just some great photos. So hopefully I'll bring that to you. It was just kind of cool to, to do this short story on the rocket range as part of Manitoba Day last week, and to get such a great response from someone who had actually been up there and worked. And it's really going to help Roland in his research on the range. So I'm pretty excited about that connection. We also, of course, have seen a large number of viewer images this particular week because of the eclipse. So let's see if we can get a few of the images in. I in fact got so many that I'm not sure that I got as many. I'm not sure that every image that everybody sent me will make it into the list here, but I tried to get as many as I could. So we had some really nice shots of the moon. This is one right from the very beginning where it's still the penumbral eclipse. The outer kind of shady, faint shadow of the Earth is just on the moon on the left there. And a great shot from Dale and James. And they sent another one sort of halfway through the partial eclipse. And this is kind of what it looked like visually, of course. On the live stream, I was overexposing the bright part so that we could show the color in the shadow. But this is really more true to what you would see if you were watching the eclipse. So great shots there, you guys. Thanks very much for those. This is kind of a cool one. Kathy Romanchuk was watching the broadcast and watching the real thing at the same time. And so she had sort of the best of both worlds, that visual view of the bright part of the eclipse, as you would see with your eyes, and then the overexposed but more colorful view of the live stream there. So that was pretty cool. And then Kathy also sent a sort of a second image where the contrast was sort of bumped up to really show the color in the sky. So we think these cameras are so great and they have all this digital capability and processing and things like that, but they still have a hard time really capturing the magic of seeing the eclipse with your eye. This is another shot from Dale and James. I tried to put these in kind of chronological order, so that's maybe why they're all grouped like this. The last little bit of the moon visible before totality, you're already seeing the beautiful red color, and the shading across the disk is really, really beautiful. Right around that time, we saw a UFO. And in fact, you see it on the chat in the live stream. People start talking about it. And then I only noticed it because Fallon was there with her family and said, "Hey, there's the Starlink train." And we all looked, and there was this line of satellites, about 50 of them, in a tiny little line moving across the sky. And they were brilliant. They kind of had almost like a reddish pink hue to them. I think basically because of the angle, the sun was shining on them through the atmosphere of the Earth. So it was like the red sunlight was shining on these satellites as well. And here's another shot from Ulrica's son, Paul Schreckenbach, who got sort of a more zoomed in view. And basically these things were just floating across the sky. So everybody stopped watching the eclipse and started watching this instead. And we got a whole bunch of UFO reports the next day. I have to say, this was the best and brightest view of these Starlink satellites that I've ever had so far. And they seem to be, it's like the conditions were just perfect for them to be really, really bright and visible, because the phone rang off the hook and I got dozens of emails saying, "Hey, I saw this light in the sky. What was it?" Here's another image from Paul Schreckenbach. As we were watching the moon, we noticed that it was sort of approaching this group, this line of 3 stars, and actually you could tell that it was going to basically run over one of the stars. So here's a shot just before that happens. There's the star down there, and the moon in this image is sort of moving down and to the left. And we basically watched it cover up that star. And then about an hour later, the star came reappearing on the other side. So we not only saw the moon moving through the Earth's shadow, but we saw it moving relative to the background stars. Here's Ulrica's sketches of that. So you've got the line of the 3 stars that were there. And here's the moon where it was earlier in the eclipse. And then as the moon is in total phase, it's covered up that star that was sort of right in about there. And you see it took, a little bit more than an hour to sort of move past and uncover that star. And I got to look through Ulrika's legendary, by this point, 20 by 80 binoculars, and man, they are really nice. I highly recommend those Celestron 20 by 80s. They were just a beautiful view. And while it was nice to watch through a telescope, there's something about using both eyes that just makes it seem a little more real. But I don't know, there's something about it that is different from a telescope view for sure. Here's Brian Park and his family were out as well. And here's a shot of the eclipse. It looks like it's probably pretty close to mid-eclipse. And you've got the really delicate shading of the colors there. The deep red up at the top, which is the center of the Earth's shadow. And then the moon is almost reaching to the edge of the Earth's shadow here. So it's just sort of fading out and going from deep red to sort of orangey and this sort of a coppery color. And then almost this faint pink on the outside. Really, really nice. Nicely captures the color stuff there. So great job, Brian. And here's another shot with different exposure settings. And I wanted to show this one partly because of the great colors, but also partly because there's that star that has just popped out on the other side. It was over here in the images earlier, so sort of completes that cycle. And we had a few times where, the clouds sort of rolled in, and so we didn't get perfect views, and so we would sort of stop and just chat with the people that were around, and then things would clear up again and people would run back to their scopes and their cameras and things like that. This was a really cool image. Dave Jordan sent this in, and it captures some of the other things we saw that night. First of all, there's the eclipse in the bottom right there. These are lights from a radio tower, he says. But interesting to see, the differences in the shades of red. I mean, we think the moon is red, but then you look at one of these red, probably LED lights or whatever, and there's definitely a difference here. And then up here, this is the International Space Station, which went flying over 3 times every 90 minutes during the eclipse. We just had perfect conditions for that as well. So a full night of observing, and there was just so much stuff going on. So great shot. Thanks for sending this in, Dave. And it really does capture, the space station was really bright. And it went zooming across the sky a few more times. Here's a shot from Yasmina sent me this one in, but I'm not sure exactly who in the family actually shot it. This is a phone through telescope eyepiece kind of thing. And the color, I think I did something weird to this image because it looked way better than this earlier. Maybe I magnified it too much. Sorry about that. But there's another one here. I really like the colors on this though. And then here's a great shot where, you're holding the eyepiece or the phone up to the eyepiece and trying to keep it centered and so on. But I think it actually worked really well not having the whole moon in the field, because you've got the bright part and then you've got all this delicate shading here. Just really, really nice image. And this really reminded me sort of what it was like to look at the eclipse through a telescope, because you're doing the same thing with your eye, and it really made it feel really authentic. So I'm sorry if I didn't get your pictures up there, but like I say, we had a lot of them, and I really like to chat with all of you. I got to talk to Ruby and Andy as well. They were out, and I heard from Eric and from Kathy, and Lander and his family were down at the planetarium a little while ago. I got to say hi to him. That was awesome. So it's been really fulfilling for me the last couple of weeks to see so many folks from Dome at Home, all the people that I talk to and think about and get ready for the show, but I've never met in person. So it was really, really nice. Let's see. I just want to check the chat here. Lots of things coming through. Lots of people chatting and so on. Hello, everyone. Oh, Callie, yes, we missed you. You're late. That's okay. No, it's great that you're here. Let's see. Tiffany's talking about the Starlink satellites and that they were supposed to be visible just before 11 last night, but couldn't see anything. So here's the thing about Starlink. The predictions tell you where they are, but the only thing that tells you what they're going to look like is how long it's been since the launch. If you see them within 24 hours of launch, you'll see them like we did on Sunday night with a line of dots all right next to each other, all flying together. It looks like a string of pearls. After about 48 hours, they've started to spread out. And after about 2 days from launch, you basically get, maybe 3 days from launch, you basically get them so far spread out that they'll come across the sky one by one, and like there'll be a bunch in a line, but you'll only see 4 or 5 or 6 of them at the same time, because by the time the next one comes up, the first one has gone down below the horizon and so on. They also get fainter as they go farther from the date of launch, because not only are they spreading out in their orbit, they're actually moving to a higher orbit, which makes them fainter. So to get a good view of Starlinks, you really want to catch them within a day or so if possible. Luckily, SpaceX is launching a new batch pretty much every week this year. So keep in touch with the satellite groups. My favorite one is heavensabove.com, which I'll drop in the chat here just to make sure. You type in your location and it basically will do predictions for all the satellites, space stations and Starlinks and everything like that. So really, really good. It was great fun to see all you folks out there. Let's see. We had another question here. Oh, Bob. Hey, how's it going? Good friend of mine, Bob Rogers, asks, if you were standing on the moon during a lunar eclipse, would it be a solar eclipse looking back at the Earth? Yes, it would, but the Earth is bigger than the moon is, and so the Earth would actually overcover the sun. So, you know, when we see a solar eclipse, the sun and the moon look like they're the same size. Well, in this case, the sun would look the same size as it does, but the Earth would be like 4 times as big. So you wouldn't get that sort of perfect alignment where the center of the sun is blocked out and then you have that blue ring of fire around the corona like we saw in 79. I know you were in school with me, so you probably remember that eclipse as well. From the moon, you wouldn't see that because the Earth is just so big that it would block out all of that. So we really are the only place in the solar system that gets this kind of eclipse. But that's the reverse alignment, effectively, yes. Let's see. Oh, Phil and Fallon and so on, and Fam. Yes, it was a really great time viewing eclipse with you guys at Birds Hill. Yes, it was. We have to do this again. I can't arrange another eclipse very soon, but we don't need an eclipse as an excuse. We'll just get out there. Okay, Tiffany says, so even though these ones were launched on Tuesday, that doesn't mean those are the ones that we've been seeing. Yes. Oh, okay. So they launch the satellites, but not every launch of satellites will come over Manitoba. So what'll happen is sometimes they'll launch them and there'll be an orbit that's going to go over Europe or over the other side of the world or whatever. Or they just don't happen to be visible above us at night until they've already spread out. So there's a lot of variables that have to sort of come together to give a really good chance to see them. This was the first time that I have successfully seen a Starlink train that close together, and I've tried on a number of occasions, and even the times that it was supposed to work out, you know, there'd be clouds or I'd have something else, or I'd just miss it by 5 minutes because I didn't set my alarm. So it takes a little bit of practice to get them, but we'll have lots of opportunities. All right, let's see. We also now have, hang on here, just have to make another switch here because some other things are going on. I'm going to do cool space stuff first, and then we're going to go to our feature interview with our paleontologist. So let's first do
cool space stuff.
So just an hour ago, the Boeing Starliner spacecraft took off on its test flight. It launched just before 6 o'clock our time, and
when the
I'm just going to fast forward it to the appropriate, interesting bit because, you know, We can do that here.
Pressurization.
There we go.
Starliner spacecraft.
So the Boeing Starliner is the spacecraft that they have developed to take astronauts to the International Space Station. Just like SpaceX's Dragon, Boeing was also working on a spacecraft. They got the contract a couple of years later, and so they've been a little bit behind compared to SpaceX. They were supposed to launch this summer.
Closed loop control.
They had some problems. They had to redo a bunch of things. They got to the launch pad.
Pitchover is complete.
And have launched today.
The RD-180 is now throttling down to maintain acceptable dynamic pressure limits
the
on the
initial
vehicle.
launch seems to have gone well. And to be honest, I have not yet seen any of
All
the
systems
details
continue to look
of
good.
any changes. So I always
Vehicle
check
is now
out
passing through Mach 2,
Spaceflight,
maximum dynamic pressure.
Spaceflight Now, which is my source for all this kind of stuff.
T plus 50
There's
seconds.
no other
Atlas
update
is now
in
4 miles
terms
in
of
altitude.
what has gone on, but it didn't blow up.
The astronauts
So
on board the
that's pretty
International
good.
Space Station will establish communications.
So
link
this
with the
spacecraft will
Starliner as
actually
it
go to the
approaches.
International Space Station.
They'll send some simple
dock
commands such as
automatically,
turning on a
robotically,
docking
to
light
prove that it'll all
to
work.
confirm the command link between
And
the
then
space
I'm sure there's
station and the
stuff on
Starliner.
board for the
Operations
astronauts.
of
So
Starliner
then it'll
complete,
return
and
and
the
land.
shuttle will now
And
continue
if that
with
test goes
standard
well,
propellant
it'll be
levels
cleared to carry astronauts. And so instead
Now
of
our
just
ascent
Dragon
pods are reached
spacecraft
into the Earth's
going up,
atmosphere.
we'll also have
This will complete
Boeing
today's commentary of the
Starliners. And that's
OH-2
good
launch.
because
Is that
the other spacecraft that we currently use to get to and from the space station is the Russian Soyuz spacecraft. And there are increasing tensions around Russia at this point. And so it is entirely possible. In fact, they've even
final
announced
call
that
out
they
from
may be pulling
ULA's
out of the
telemetry
space station
commentator,
program,
now
although
that-
no one seems to be able to get a straight answer from them at this point. So anyway, this means that the space station will continue, which is fantastic. Now, there were a few other little things, but unfortunately we're running way behind, so I'm not going to be able to get to all the other space stuff. But suffice it to say, space is cool, and there's always cool things going on. Let's see. All right. We are going to talk a little bit about the dinosaurs and the impact that wiped them out and so on. And the best way to do that is to talk to Dr. Graham Young at the Manitoba Museum. No relation to me at all. It's kind of bizarre, actually. There's Graham Young. There's Jeff Young at the University of Manitoba, who studies meteorites. Also no relation to either of us. And then there's me. So I'm not quite sure how big the Young family tree is, that we're not closely related. But anyway, we will be taking a look at, I had a chat with Graham just yesterday, because today he's already in the members exhibit chatting with all of the members at the preview. So let's take a look at what he has to say about the impact that killed the dinosaurs, and also some of the other things that are related. Some of the things about Manitoba that maybe you didn't know. Where is our... Well, hi, Graham. Thanks for joining us on the show today.
Hi, Scott. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. I like your background. It's like you're right out there in the Badlands.
Thank you. Yeah, we're in the Frenchman Formation in the Saskatchewan, in the Saskatchewan area, bit south of East End.
Oh, nice. All right. Well, we've been talking a little bit about dinosaurs, and with the upcoming exhibit, everyone says it's an asteroid that finished off the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. What's the evidence for that in terms of the geological record?
Well, I think there is a lot of evidence that the asteroid was the finishing touch for the dinosaurs. It was long suggested that dinosaurs were in decline in many places in the late part of the Cretaceous period of geological time, so leading up to about 65, 66 million years ago. But there was also a suggestion that something catastrophic had happened at the end. And a couple of scientists, the Alvarezes, had the idea that they could look at the chemical record to see if there was evidence of an impact. And they went looking at intervals across the boundary between the Cretaceous, what was called the Cretaceous Tertiary boundary, nowadays called the Cretaceous Paleogene boundary. And sure enough, they found an anomaly in an element that's very rare on Earth, which is iridium, but which shows up at many times the background rate in thin intervals right at the Cretaceous Paleogene boundary. So that was pretty good evidence. And then people, of course, went looking to see where this might have come from, and they discovered a large impact site at Chicxulub in the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. And more recently, there's been a lot of very interesting evidence coming out about events in North America, particularly at that time. There's been a fantastic site that's coming to light, we're being gradually told about this fantastic site down in the Dakotas, which seems to have deposits basically from the day of the impact. So I think the evidence is pretty unequivocal nowadays, but still there is evidence that there were other things going on too. The sea that had been in the middle of North America had been receding and had left much of the middle of the continent. So, the dinosaurs were dealing with global climate change, kind of a familiar term for people. And there was certainly evidence of major volcanism in places on Earth at that time as well. So I think the deck was already a little bit stacked against the dinosaurs and some of those other groups of what we call Mesozoic life forms. But certainly there was this big impact that really changed things right away.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting that there were other factors in play as well, and the asteroid may have just been the icing on the cake. I know that there have been other mass extinctions throughout history. I mean, why do we fixate on the dinosaur one? Why is that the popular one?
Well, I know why it's the popular one. I was going to say some of us don't fixate on it because I actually work on one of the other mass extinctions in the history of life. But no, I mean, they're dinosaurs. What else can you say?
Right, exactly.
I just got a letter today from a grade 6 kid about dinosaurs and how excited he was, and he has a whole lot of questions for me. And we don't tend to get those even about trilobites.
Right. Yeah.
Let alone the many other groups of fossils of organisms that became extinct at mass extinctions. People are excited by dinosaurs. They go out for Jurassic Park. I don't think Precambrian Park or Permian Park would have anything like the drawing power. So
yeah.
That's obviously why that is. But you're right. There were these other big extinctions. People do need to know that it isn't just the dinosaurs going extinct, but there have actually been bigger extinctions. That dinosaur extinction is the last of the big 5 mass extinctions in the history of life so far. And perhaps most critically, that each mass extinction seems to have different causes. So that's really the important thing people need to know, that you can't just look at the dinosaur extinction and go, well, as long as we're not hit by an asteroid, we're fine. Because there are lots of other causes, and often it is climate change. It's things like the overturning of water in the world's oceans, or changes in runoff from the continents, things that are far less dramatic on a human lifespan, perhaps, than an asteroid, but still enough to cause major extinction.
Wow.
Things are adapted for the world to stay mostly the same. And
right.
Life doesn't like it when major aspects of our conditions change in a hurry.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Now, I mean, getting back to the dinosaur side of things, because that is our theme for today. Although now I want to talk to you about these other mass extinctions on a future show. It's kind of
sure.
Anyway,
Do that.
the museum actually has a piece of the what I grew up calling the KT boundary, the actual layer that marks the ends of the dinosaurs. And you were the leader of the team that went and got that out of the ground. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
That was an interesting expedition. It was a lot of fun. Just to preface it, ideally we would be showing these things in Manitoba, but unfortunately, in Manitoba, we do not get this boundary preserved in rocks that you can find on the surface. So we do have the KT or KPG boundary in Manitoba, but we have to drill down in the Turtle Mountain area. So so we can't go out and collect it in Manitoba. And the closest we could really go was out in southwest Saskatchewan in that East End area. And it was a site, there was a good site there that I had visited previously. So I had seen what the site looked like, although the rocks weren't well exposed when we were there. And we knew people at the T-Rex Center in East End, and they were very helpful and able to point us in the right direction. So I went out there with our diorama artist Betsy Thorstenson and Debbie, our diorama assistant, and we also had a videographer come with us, and we took a van loaded with a lot of equipment because these rocks are challenging to collect because they're not hard rocks. It's not like going out in southern Manitoba and chopping out a piece of Tyndallstone. With something like Tyndallstone, you might need a rock saw, but it's going to stay. You can make a big piece stay together in one piece because it's very solid rock. These rocks in Saskatchewan from the end of the time of the dinosaurs are almost like soft sediment. They're fragile, they fracture. So you have to use different techniques. And we basically use the same sort of method you use for collecting dinosaur bones. We excavated a vertical face of this rock / sediment. They wrap them up really like a broken leg in a cast, and use layers of plaster and burlap and other material, and then put in pieces of wood as stiffeners. And then we very carefully cut down behind it, drop the whole thing down, package the other side in plaster, and then we had the challenge of getting it down to the van. My guess would be that it weighed 600 to 800 pounds when we had jacketed it in plaster. So that was, I think took us about 3 days to do that. Unfortunately, we had splendid weather. We had that spectacular landscape. Anyone who hasn't been out to the Frenchman Valley and the East End area, I would strongly encourage you to go there. I think it's the most beautiful place on the prairies.
Right. And it is really not what, if you've only seen Saskatchewan from the Trans-Canada, it's really not what you expect. It's not that flat stereotype.
It is not the least like that flat stereotype. It's a big, broad landscape. It's almost badlands in places with cacti.
It sounded like a great trip. Now, you mentioned this came from Saskatchewan just because of the requirements of easily getting to it. But there have been impact events in Manitoba as well. What can you tell us about some of the things people may not realize about, the impact history of this province?
Well, there are several structures in Manitoba that have been identified as impact craters. And when you look, there have been quite variable amounts written on them. So there are two. Well, there's one that Winnipeggers seem to know very, very well, which is, of course, West Hawk Lake. And everyone remarks what a deep lake it is. And everybody seems to know that it is an impact crater. Another one that people may not be so familiar with, but which I think is really an amazing structure, is the what's called the St. Martin structure, or some people call it the Gypsumville structure. So it's on the you really go right across it if you drive to Grand Rapids or Thompson from Winnipeg. As you go north, as you get up towards St. Martin Junction, you can really see the rim of the crater. Now, in addition to those two really well-known structures, there are a bunch of others which I don't know very much about. There's one at High Rock Lake, which is not really very accessible in the Interlake. There's one at Hartney, which is actually underneath younger rocks above it. So it's, sort of like that Cretaceous Paleogene boundary in Manitoba. That Hartney structure is something you can only see by drilling. And then I think there are one or two others as well. So there's quite a series of them. But if people are interested in seeing them or reading about them, I would strongly encourage them to to look at those first two.
Oh yeah.
And I know with West Hawk that Dr. Bill Brisbane, who was at U of M, did quite a bit of interpretation, and there was a project to get signage out there. So I'm sure people have seen the signage.
Yeah, there is some interpretation at the lake there, which is kind of cool. And
I don't think there's any signage at St. Martin, but there should be.
yeah, for sure. Well, it's interesting that there are so many impact structures, and there's probably others that we just haven't detected because they are below the surface, and no one just has drilled there, I guess.
I think Manitoba is relatively good because it's relatively good for finding these things, although some are buried, because the geology's been much less disturbed here. If you look at somewhere like British Columbia and Western Alberta, well, those mountains have risen in the past couple of 100 million years. Sounds like a long time, but Manitoba has pretty much undisturbed geology from the past many 100 million years. And in fact, there's not been any major disturbance for a couple of billion years.
Right. So you don't have the volcanism, the faults, and all that kind of stuff that
That's
would
right.
disrupt any of these things.
You don't have
Interesting.
volcanism, you don't have major faulting, you don't have mountains being pushed up. All of that is deep in our past. So as a result, if something has hit since that time, nowhere near as old as things on the moon, but if something has hit in the time that Manitoba's been somewhat undisturbed, and especially if things haven't eroded away, that's really been that's what does take things away in Manitoba. So that if we have even these craters that I'm talking about that are well known, we're not seeing the top surface.
Right.
They're cut down. It's a section
Oh, okay. Yeah, right.
down in them, and the experts on those would be able to tell you how much has been lost.
Right.
I wouldn't know, but you always have to think about that with geological structures.
Right. They're not the way they looked when they were pristine, like the
Right. They're
impact
not
crater
the way
down
they
in
look.
Arizona,
Yeah.
which looks like an impact crater, but that's
Mhm.
only tens of thousands of years old, I think. It's relatively recent.
Yeah, and I saw one in Estonia that was like that, where you really could go right into the, you could go right down into there was a lake down
Right.
in the bottom of it. It was quite fabulous. But yeah, I think it was only 15,000 or something. Yeah, these have been planed off, flattened out. I'm sure that West Hawk has lost an awful lot of the structure that it would have had.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for sharing your knowledge on the impact history of Manitoba, and also telling us a bit about the dinosaurs. And I know you're heavily involved in the dinosaur exhibit that's opening up in a couple of days, so I'll let you get back to it.
Well, thanks, Scott. I think all of us are really looking forward to this exhibit.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we'll talk again soon.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, talk to you.
It's always kind of cool to look at a planet in depth, like the Earth is the only one we can really do that with. But really, geology is kind of just a subset of astronomy. Really, well, everything's really just a subset of astronomy when it comes right down to it. But it's kind of cool to see some of these processes and how they all link together. I have not been out to West Hawk Lake in a very, very long time. Probably since I was a kid. So I think I'm going to have to make a trip this summer and go and see what I can see in terms of the impact structure and things like that. I'm not sure if I'll get to Lake St. Martin, but it's cool that there are these things, relatively close by. All right. Fallon was asking, if you were on the moon during the lunar eclipse, would the ground be red? It absolutely would. Actually, Bob had asked, would you see a total lunar eclipse or a total solar eclipse if you were on the moon? And I realized that I didn't fully answer that correctly. The moon is big, or the Earth is bigger, so you wouldn't see the corona of the sun. But what you would see is the atmosphere of the Earth glowing red. So instead of seeing that sort of blue ring of fire, you would see this ghostly red ring of the Earth's atmosphere being backlit by the sun. And that's the light that would shine down onto the moon and bathe everything in a red light. So, that might actually be really cool. Maybe not the same as our total solar eclipse that we get here from Earth, but still a pretty cool event. Somebody needs to send a rover up there with a good high-def camera and just have it ready for November. So any of you engineers out there, get on that. We'll see what we can do. All right. We have, another question here from Tiffany. Would all of these impacts have happened around the same time? This is a really good question. If not, you would think an impact big enough to create a lake would be a big problem, and you don't hear about a lot of localized extinctions. Yeah, that's certainly true. The impacts that are visible here in Manitoba didn't happen at the same time. They were sort of scattered throughout history. I think Falcon Lake or West Hawk Lake was like 50 million years ago, and the Lake St. Martin one was 100 million years ago, or something like that. But you would get local extinction, for lack of a better term. I mean, when a 2-kilometer rock falls out of the sky and lands nearby, you're going to have a bad day for sure. But it wouldn't necessarily be global effects. And so you might wind up having, localized extinctions, but it's hard to tell because the fossil record that we have for life in general is actually not really well sampled. Basically, like, we don't have fossils from all over the world. We've got fossils from this one site in Saskatchewan, and this other site in Montana, and this site in China, and this site in Siberia, and whatever. It's not like we know what was living in West Hawk Lake versus, say, Alberta, or something even relatively close like that, because there just isn't enough information, enough fossils to actually tell that kind of stuff. You probably would be able to see some kind of records in the rocks locally. I know that, that when there are big fires or things like that, you can wind up getting ash and so on in the different layers. But it's really, really hard to spot that kind of stuff on a small scale. So I think that's probably why we don't sort of have that level of information. Now, there was a period in the solar system's history where there were a lot of impacts, but that was before there was water on the Earth. That was like where the Earth was just sort of solidifying, and it was just getting pummeled, and so was the moon. And so the moon is covered with craters. The Earth was hit by all those things and was covered with craters, but it was still forming, and there were still volcanoes, and then the oceans came and covered things, and then the continents moved around. And so we've really erased all of our scars from those early times. The impact craters that we can still see today or detect today are the random little bits that were floating around the solar system that just happened to crash into our planet one day. Kind of like the random meteors that you might see on any given night, except just bigger. So it's a kind of an interesting topic in terms of, we worry about all of these things on the Earth and things like that. And there's lots of people that are out there searching for asteroids and detecting things to make sure that nothing's going to hit us without us knowing, and so on. But really, over the long term, it is kind of random, it seems. So anyway, lots of things to think about. We will be back next week with another show, and I forgot to look in advance to see what the show is, so you'll just have to go to the Manitoba Museum's website. That will tell you all the details. So here's our social media pages, and you can also always visit our planetarium website, which gives all of the details of what the programs are. And here is the Dome at Home page that will give you the information on the next show. Jacqueline is asking, how large was the asteroid that took out the dinosaurs? Probably about 10 kilometers across. So we're talking a pretty big rock. Small compared to asteroids that we find out in the asteroid belt. I mean, some of those go up to about 600 kilometers, but those ones are in stable orbits. They don't come near us. Most of the things that actually still come close to the Earth are much smaller. Every once in a while, on a slow news day, they'll say, oh, an asteroid came flying past the Earth at only 10 times the distance of the moon. Those things are a dozen meters across, or maybe 50 meters across. Really, really small. I mean, still, if it landed on your head, it'd be a bad day. But not the kind of thing that would necessarily even make it through the atmosphere to cause any problems. So the stuff that threatens us is actually mostly pretty small. All right, everyone. We will see you all next week, and hopefully we'll also be able to announce next week when our next in-person Dome at Home gathering will occur. What we'll do is we'll set a date, and if it's clear, we'll go, and if it's not clear, we will put it off for another day, and we'll try and live stream from that as well. So those of you that can't make it to a location near Winnipeg can still join us in. It's a great community we got that have sort of clustered around this show, and I'd like to hang out with you guys. So, all right, have a great week. Hopefully we'll see you at the dinosaur exhibit or the planetarium sometime, and send us your letters, send us your pictures. We'll see you all next week. Have a great night.